Following the release of Winning Run by Namco in 1988, it was clear that 3D polygonal graphics were the way forwards for arcade games. While other publishers quickly followed suit, rivals Sega wouldn't make the leap to polygons for some time. The company stuck with their Super Scaler series of arcade boards, which were able to smoothly scale and rotate sprites that could then be arranged in such a way that provided the illusion of real 3D, while also allowing for smoother frame rates. However, this technology was quickly becoming dated as the power of arcade systems improved, and so the company's AM2 division began work on the Model 1 arcade board in 1989. One of the first games created for the system was a racing game designed to test and showcase the capabilities of the new arcade hardware. This game was so impressive that Sega management gave a team headed by Yu Suzuki, who had previously worked on titles like Outrun and Hang On, permission to develop this prototype into a full game. This would go on to be known as Virtua Racing and became the Model 1's debut title when it was released in 1992. Virtua Racing blew everything from Sega's most recent Super Scaler arcade games to competing 3D arcade titles out of the water, with far more graphical fidelity than had ever been seen before. The game would also see massive commercial success, consistently being at or near the top of arcade revenue charts from the end of 1992 well into 1993 in Japan and North America alike. With this massive success, Sega AM2 began work on a home console port of Virtua Racing. As their then current Sega Genesis lacked the power to properly render a detailed polygonal environment out of the box, the game was developed around the Sega Virtua processor, a modified chip from Samsung similar in function to the Super FX chip that had debuted in 1993 for the Super Nintendo. In essence, both processors performed all of the necessary calculations in order to create the 3D polygons, which were then rendered as pixels by their own respective systems. However, the Virtua processor was the more powerful of the two by a significant margin, and was also specialized to only work with polygonal graphics, as opposed to the Super FX, which was designed for both polygons and advanced sprite work. As a result of its optimizations, when Virtua Racing for the Genesis released in 1994, it was light years ahead of comparable Super FX games, featuring a higher frame rate than Star Fox, along with having much more detail on screen than Stunt Race FX. The game features all of the same content and features from the arcade original, with the same 3 tracks and gameplay style being faithfully recreated in Virtua Racing mode. You start near the back of a 16-car grid, with 3 classes of car being spread throughout the field. Each of these classes has a different engine and top speed, and are denoted by a different color on the minimap. To win a stage, you need to pass all of the opponent cars within 5 laps before the stage ends. Similar to other arcade racers published by Sega around this time, the game also features a timer that can be extended by passing checkpoints, but it's far more lenient than the ones in their other games, and as such it can be mostly ignored. Crashing at high speed can cause damage to your car, decreasing your top speed and forcing you to come into the pits for repairs. Impressively, the Genesis game manages to include a fully animated pit crew similar to the arcade original, albeit far less detailed. The attention to detail when it comes to the port doesn't stop there. Some more immersive features carried over from the arcade game include sparks flying out from under your car over bumps, along with grass being scattered when going off-road. However, the most notable of the features carried over has to be the VR modes. By selecting the VR buttons numbered 1 through 4, you can change camera views between 2 different chase angles, a top-down view, and a first-person view with a fully animated cockpit. While this was a neat feature in the arcade game, it's downright invaluable in the Genesis version, as the game's lowered frame rate and simplified terrain means that it can be hard to tell what's going on from certain angles. The first-person and near-chase cameras don't give the best perspective of the road ahead, meaning that I like to stick to the far chase or top-down views when playing. However, it's important to note that the animated steering and arms from the arcade first-person view are still present in their respective camera here. Although a wheel peripheral was planned to ship with the port early on, it was scrapped due to the excessive cost the resulting product would have retailed at, meaning you're stuck with digital control here. However, a unique feature for the time is that when using the 6-button pad, the game allows you to fully customize and assign the controls to your liking. On top of the existing content from the arcade mode, the Genesis game includes a fair number of new features. After completing a race in Virtua Racing mode, you can view a replay, which, while extremely impressive for the time, can come with the side effect of sometimes exposing a few of the game's graphical shortcomings, i.e. lack of skyboxes. Free Run mode allows you to practice the different tracks, and by winning at each circuit, you even unlock the ability to race on them in reverse. Imagine being a kid in 1994 who just got Virtua Racing. You'd be like, "Oh my god, it's Virtua Racing, the most graphically intensive game on the Sega Genesis." You're then sitting in awe watching the demo, admiring the graphics, when the VR logo flashes on screen causing you to have a seizure, then you hit your head on the floor and get knocked out, then a few hours later, "Oh my god, it's Virtua Racing, the most graphically intensive game on the Sega Genesis."